My adoptive sister disappeared for years while I took care of both our parents alone, then showed up after our dad died and tried to force sell my house behind my back. She doesn't know I'm already one step ahead. My parents adopted Bridget when she was 3 and I was 5. From the very beginning, my parents made it clear that we were equals. Same allowance, same rules, same birthdays. If I got a present for $50, Bridget got a present for $50. They wrote it in a little notebook my mom kept in a drawer by the toaster, just so they'd never make a mistake about it. But Bridget always had this thing where she wanted more. Not in a bratty way at first, just small things. If I picked a blue backpack, she wanted the blue one too, even though she'd already chosen red. If my dad took me fishing on a Saturday, she'd throw a fit until he canceled his Sunday plans to take her somewhere better. My parents always gave in because they didn't want her to feel like she was on the outside. By high school, it got worse. Bridget started telling her friends that our parents didn't treat her fairly because she was adopted. She'd say it loud enough for my mom to hear across the dining room, and my mom would go quiet for the rest of the night. My dad would shake his head and say she was just going through a phase. She wasn't going through a phase. Junior year, Bridget took my dad's car without asking while he was at work, and wrecked the front bumper pulling out of a parking garage. My dad didn't yell at her. He paid for the repairs out of his own savings, and bought himself a cheaper car so she could have a reliable one for school. Bridget didn't say thank you. She told her friends the car was embarrassing, because it was used. After high school, I stayed home and went to community college because my mom had just been diagnosed with early onset dementia, and somebody needed to help my dad with her daily care. Bridget moved to Denver with a boyfriend and didn't come back for 3 years. Not for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas, not when my mom stopped recognizing our faces. I was the one who sat with my mom every single evening and read to her even when she didn't know who I was. I was the one who learned how to manage her medications, color-coded by day in a plastic organizer on the counter. I was the one who scheduled her appointments, sat with her through every neurologist visit, and held her hand when she got scared in waiting rooms. I was the one who helped my dad convert the downstairs office into a bedroom so she wouldn't have to deal with the stairs. Bridget called maybe once a month, and half the time it was to ask my dad to send her money for rent. He always sent it. When my mom passed, Bridget came home for 4 days. She cried at the funeral, hugged relatives she hadn't spoken to in years, and then asked my dad how much was left in the savings account before the reception was even over. My dad looked at her for a long time without saying a word. Then he walked outside and sat on the porch by himself for an hour. I brought him a glass of water and he didn't take it. He just stared at the front yard and said quietly, "She doesn't see what she does." That was all he said about it. 2 years after that, my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I moved back into the house full-time to take care of him. I cooked every meal, drove him to every appointment, held the bucket when the treatments made him sick at 3 in the morning, and slept on the couch in his room because he didn't want to be alone at night. I learned the names of every drug he was on, and what they did, and what they couldn't do. I learned how to read his face when he was hurting and didn't want to admit it. I learned how to sit with him in silence for an hour without making it feel like silence. Bridget visited twice in 8 months. The first time, she stayed for a weekend and spent most of it on the phone in the backyard arguing with some new boyfriend. The second time, she came by herself and sat my dad down at the dining table and asked him to add her name to the house deed. She said it would make things simpler when the time came. She said those exact words to a man sitting in his own dining room with a tube in his arm. My dad told her everything was already set up in a trust and would be split equally between us. She didn't say anything else that night, but I saw her face, and I knew right then that equal was never going to be enough for her. After my dad passed, I handled everything alone. The funeral, the paperwork, the bills, the phone calls. Bridget showed up the day after the burial and walked through the house room by room like she was appraising it. She opened closets, looked through drawers, checked the garage, and then asked me where the life insurance documents were. I told her the attorney had everything. At the reading, the attorney explained that my dad left the house and the savings account to both of us, 50-50, managed through the trust. 3 weeks later, she called me and said she wanted to sell the house immediately. I told her I wasn't ready. She said that wasn't my decision alone and that she needed her share of the money now because she was starting over. I said no, not yet. That's when things turned. Bridget started calling our aunts and uncles telling them I was keeping her from what was rightfully hers. She told our cousin I had been whispering in our dad's ear while he was sick to get more of the money. None of it was true, but people started treating me differently. What Bridget didn't know was that I had already sat down with the estate attorney 2 months before my dad passed. Not because I was planning anything, but because my dad asked me to. He had a clear night, one of his last good ones, and he looked at me and said he knew exactly what was going to happen after he was gone. He told me he loved Bridget the same as me, but he said he wasn't blind. So we set up the trust with a specific clause. He told me the house goes to whoever stayed, whoever showed up. He said Roman, the estate attorney, had every detail locked down. Bridget had no idea. 3 days after the trust reading, my phone rang. A real estate agent, way too cheerful, said he wanted to schedule a walkthrough of the property for a market evaluation. I sat up straight. "I'm sorry, who asked you to call me?" He said Bridget had contacted him. He said she told him she was a co-owner and wanted it listed as soon as possible. He was talking like it was already a done deal. I told him nobody was listing anything and ended the call. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from the fact that Bridget was already going behind my back 3 days after the reading. 3 days. She didn't call me first. She didn't text. She went straight to an agent. I picked up the phone and called Roman. He answered on the second ring and I told him everything. Roman's voice was calm the way it always was. "She can't do anything without both signatures, but if she's contacting agents, she's going to push harder. You need to be ready." Then he reminded me about the clause, the caregiving clause. He said the trust had a residency and caregiving provision that stated if one beneficiary served as the primary caregiver and lived in the home during the parent's final years, that beneficiary gets 70% of the home's value, not 50, 70. The other beneficiary gets 30. The clause named me specifically. It listed the dates I moved back in. It documented the caregiving. Bridget had no idea this clause even existed. Roman said, "Your dad wanted to wait until after he was gone. He didn't want the fight while he was still here." That evening I got a text from my aunt. It said Bridget had called her crying, saying that I changed the locks on the house and was refusing to let her come get her belongings. I read that message 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I hadn't changed a single lock. The same locks that were on the doors when my dad was alive were still there. Bridget hadn't even asked to come get anything. She hadn't called me. She hadn't texted. She made the whole thing up. I called my aunt right away. She picked up on the first ring, and I could already tell from the way she said hello that she'd already decided whose side she was on. I said, I haven't changed a single lock. Bridget hasn't even asked to come get anything. She's making this up. Long pause. The kind of pause that tells you the person heard you but doesn't want to agree with you. Then my aunt said, well, she sounded really upset. Maybe you two should just talk. That was it. Bridget lies to her face, invents a whole scenario, and my aunt's response was that Bridget sounded upset. Like sounding upset is the same as telling the truth. Like crying on the phone automatically makes you the victim. I realized right then that the family was already leaning toward Bridget's version. Not because they had proof, not because they checked with me first. Because Bridget knew how to work people. She always had. She knew how to cry at the right moment, how to lower her voice and sound small and hurt, how to make herself the one everyone wanted to protect. And I was the one who stayed quiet and handled things and never made a scene, so nobody thought to check on my side of it. After that call, something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, just a decision. I called Roman back. I want to schedule the full formal trust review, the caregiving clause, all of it. I want Bridget in that room when you read it. Roman didn't hesitate. I'll send her a certified letter requiring her attendance. She'll have to sign for it. She'll know it's official. 2 days later, my phone buzzed and Bridget's name popped up. I picked up and before I could say hello, she was already yelling. What is this letter? Why is the attorney sending me a mandatory meeting notice? What did you do? Her voice was high and tight. I sat down at the dining table and kept my voice as level as I could. I didn't do anything. The trust has terms we both need to hear. Just show up. She didn't like that. You went behind my back. You got the attorney to change something. I know you did. I closed my eyes. Nothing was changed. This is what Dad set up before he died. You'd know that if you'd been here. The line went quiet for about 3 seconds. Then she hung up. 2 hours later, my cousin called. Her voice sounded careful. She told me Bridget had been making more calls. This time it wasn't about the locks or the money. This time Bridget was telling people that I had manipulated our father while he was on his deathbed. She was saying I got him to rewrite the trust in my favor while he was too sick to think straight. She was telling the family that Junior wasn't in his right mind. She was using his sickness, the same sickness I watched eat him alive for months, as her weapon. My cousin paused. People are starting to believe her. She's saying she's going to get a lawyer and contest the whole thing. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet. This wasn't about the house anymore. Bridget was going after our dad. She was attacking his memory, telling people that the man who raised us both, who loved her like his own from the day she walked through our front door at 3 years old, was so far gone that he didn't know what he was signing. And the thing that made it worse was that I was there the night he and I sat down with Roman to put that clause together. It was one of his clearest nights. He'd had a good day. His pain was managed. He ate a full dinner for the first time in weeks. He looked at me across the table and his eyes were sharp and focused, and he talked for almost an hour about what he wanted and why. Roman sat right there with us and watched him sign every page. There was nothing confused about it. My dad knew exactly what he was doing. I called Roman and told him everything. Roman listened to all of it without cutting me off. Then he said, your father anticipated this. I held the phone. Roman continued. That's why he recorded a video statement the same night we drafted the clause. He was lucid, clear, and he explained his reasoning on camera. I have it in the file. I couldn't speak. A video. My dad made a video. He sat in front of a camera while he was dying of cancer and recorded the words that would protect me after he was gone. He never told me. He just did it quietly, the way he did everything. Even from beyond the grave, he was still one step ahead. Still the same man who converted the downstairs office for my mom, who bought himself a cheaper car so Bridget could have one for school, who sat on the porch alone for an hour after his own daughter asked about money at his wife's funeral and still didn't say a bad word about her. The morning before the meeting, my aunt called again. Her voice was different this time, almost nervous. Bridget is bringing someone with her to the meeting. Some man named Babe. She says he's helping her with the legal side. Babe? I had never heard that name in my life. I called Roman and told him. Roman said he'd look into it. Later that afternoon, he called back. He's not a lawyer. From what I can tell, he's someone she's been seeing. No legal standing whatsoever. But if she brings him, she might think he gives her leverage. Bridget was bringing a boyfriend to a legal meeting about our dead father's trust and calling it help with the legal side. She wasn't looking for legal advice. She was looking for a body in the chair next to her. Someone to make me feel outnumbered. I knew what she was doing because I'd watched her do it my whole life. Bridget never went into a fight alone. She always had someone in her corner. Not because they added anything real, but because she liked the look of it. The thing she didn't understand was that I didn't need backup. I had something better. I had the truth, and I had the paperwork to prove it. 2 days before the meeting, my cousin called me again. Same careful voice. She said Bridget had been on the phone with more relatives and the story had a new angle. Bridget was telling people she planned to demand a full audit of every dollar our father spent in his final years. She was implying I had been skimming from the accounts. That while I was driving him to chemo, I was also somehow stealing his money. Some of them were starting to wonder if maybe she had a point. I almost laughed. Bridget had no idea what she was walking into with that accusation. The day before the meeting, I drove over to Roman's office with a file box on my passenger seat. Every receipt, every bank statement, every medical bill, every copay, every grocery run. My dad had asked me from the start to keep records. Early on, when I first moved back in, he sat me down and said he wanted everything documented. He didn't say it was because of Bridget, but he didn't have to. He just said he wanted it clean and clear so nobody could ever question where the money went. I listened. I kept every single piece of paper. I had a filing system in the hall closet with tabs labeled by month. I had bank statements going back to the first week I moved in, copies of every check, every automatic payment, every transfer. If Bridget wanted an audit, she was welcome to one. It would be the shortest audit in history. I carried the box in and set it on Roman's desk. If Bridget is going to claim I stole money, she's going to have to explain every one of these. Roman opened the box and started going through it. He took his time. He pulled out folder after folder, looked at statements, cross-checked numbers, flipped through receipts. After 20 minutes, he closed the last folder and looked at me. This is airtight. Every dollar is accounted for. If she tries to claim misuse of funds, these records shut that down immediately. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like confirmation. I already knew the records were were clean because I lived them. But hearing a lawyer say it out loud mattered. Friday morning, I woke up at 5. I put on the same black blazer I wore to my dad's funeral, not for style, but because it felt like carrying a piece of him with me. I had the financial records in a folder and the personal letter in my bag, the one in my dad's handwriting that said, "You gave up your 20s for us. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for what you earned by staying." I got to Roman's office 15 minutes early and sat in the waiting room with the folder on my lap. The door opened and Bridget walked in, and she wasn't alone. Babe was with her, a tall man in a dark jacket who walked in like he owned the room. He started talking before anyone even sat down. "We're going to need copies of all financial documents related to the trust, the house appraisal, and any amendments made in the last 2 years." Roman looked at him. "And you are?" Babe said, "I'm representing Bridget's interests." Roman said, "Are you an attorney?" Babe said, "I don't need to be an attorney to ask questions." Roman's voice didn't change, but his face did. "Actually, in this context, you do. Please sit down or wait outside." Bridget jumped in immediately. "He's staying." Bridget sat down across from me and didn't look at me once. She looked at Roman. "Before we start, I want it on record that I believe this trust was altered while my father was not mentally competent. I'm prepared to challenge it in court if necessary." Roman stayed calm. "Noted. But before we discuss any challenges, the trust requires a full disclosure reading. That means I read the complete terms, including any clauses you may not have been made aware of." Roman opened the file and began reading. He started with the standard terms, the 50-50 split, the house, the savings. Bridget nodded along, looking bored. Then Roman turned the page. "There is an additional clause, Section 7, Paragraph B, titled Caregiving Provision." Bridget's expression flickered. "What provision? Nobody told me about a provision." Roman said, "That's why we're here." He read the clause out loud, every word, slow and clear. The caregiving provision stated that in recognition of continuous full-time caregiving provided by one beneficiary during the period of parental illness, that beneficiary is entitled to 70% of the home's assessed value. The remaining 30% goes to the other beneficiary. Roman read my name. He read the exact dates I moved back in. He read the documentation of daily caregiving, the medical appointments, the overnight stays, the medication management. Then he read the part about Bridget. The trust noted that Bridget's total visitation during Junior's illness came to fewer than 10 days over a period of 8 months. Bridget's face went white, not red, not flushed, white, like all the blood just left at once. "That's not legal," she said. "You can't just change a 50-50 split because someone visited more." Her voice cracked on the word visited. Roman didn't blink. "This isn't about visiting. This is about documented, full-time caregiving recognized under the trust's terms. Your father set this up with full legal counsel. It's enforceable." Babe stood up. "We're going to contest this. He was on medication. He had cancer. There's no way he was in his right mind when he signed this." His voice was loud and confident. Roman didn't flinch. He didn't even look bothered. "I anticipated that concern. Your father did too." Then he turned his laptop around so the screen faced all of us, and he pressed play. The screen showed my dad, Junior, sitting at the dining table, the same table where Bridget once asked him to add her name to the deed while he had a tube in his arm. He was thin. He was pale. His shirt hung loose on his shoulders, but his eyes were sharp, clear, focused. And when he started talking, his voice was steady. He said, "My name is Junior Battle. I am recording this on October 14th. I am of sound mind and body, and I want to explain why I made the decisions I made." I couldn't breathe. My dad looked straight into the camera. "I love both my daughters. I have loved them equally from the day they came into my life, but love and fairness are not the same thing." He paused, gathering himself. "My daughter stayed. She fed me. She held me when I was sick. She slept on my couch so I wouldn't be scared at night. She gave up years of her own life to take care of me and her mother before me." His voice cracked. He looked down at the table for a second before looking back up. "Bridget, I love you, but you left. You left when your mother needed you. You left when I needed you. And you came back asking about money before the dirt settled." He went quiet for a moment. "This isn't punishment. This is just the truth. The one who stayed gets more of the house. That's my decision, and I'm making it while I can still make it." The video ended. The screen went dark. The room was dead silent. I looked at Bridget and tears were running down her face, but they weren't sad tears. Her jaw was tight and her eyes were hard. She turned to me. "You made him say that. You coached him." Her voice was shaking. I shook my head. "I didn't even know the video existed until 3 days ago." Roman spoke up. "Your father recorded this privately with me. Your sister was not present and was not informed." Bridget didn't respond to that. She just stared at me like I had stolen something from her. Babe cleared his throat. "This won't hold up. We'll get our own attorney." Roman reached across the desk and picked up the folder I had brought him the day before. He slid it across the table. "You're welcome to try. But every dollar is accounted for, and there is zero evidence of financial manipulation. What there is evidence of is one daughter who gave everything, and one daughter who asked for more." Nobody touched the folder. Bridget stood up and grabbed her bag. She looked at me one last time. "Dad always liked you more. This proves it." I stood up too. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Dad didn't like me more. He saw me more, because I was there. Bridget held my eyes for about 2 seconds. Then she turned and walked out. Babe followed her without saying a single word. The door closed behind them, and the room was just me and Roman. Roman closed the folder. "Your father would be proud of how you handled this." I nodded. I sat back down and reached into my bag and pulled out the letter. My dad's handwriting, a little shaky but still his. I read the line one more time. Then I folded it back up and put it in the bag. I drove home. The lock stayed the same. Bridget never called again.